Well, I'll come to that, but first of all, I'm going to catch you up on, if you like, the unexpected bit of this revolution, which, of course, is the communications infrastructure, which has enabled so much of the exciting things we're talking about. I like to think I work for BT. I'm sure many of you have heard of BT. That's a tech startup, of course. You'll all be aware of that. It just started up a long time ago. In fact, this place has got massive resonances with BT. We're actually celebrating our 180th birthday this year. It was the 12th of June. I'm sure you all noted it, because on that day, a patent was filed. It was for the world's first practical electric telegraph, and it was filed by a guy called William Fothergill Cooke. Today, we'd call him an entrepreneur. And a bloke called Charles Wheatstone, who was a professor at King's University, a contemporary and lifelong friend of Michael Faraday. So there's tons of resonances there. That was also the year that Brown's Hotel opened, for those of you which many of you will have walked past. So we are a tech startup, 180 years in. So I thought I'd catch you up, first of all, on the business of communication and give you some sense of that exponential growth and challenge that we wrestle with before getting on to what I think the future is, which is to do with this business of data and what you might do with all this great connectivity. So, connection. Well, the fixed world is all about providing data connectivity. We've just been seeing some history graphs. If you go back, it's only to 2002 that broadband was launched in the UK. 2002, that's not that long ago in a 180-year history. It was only 2008 that the latest flavor of that, superfast broadband, was launched. And pleasingly, we are getting that out to most people. We're at about 95%. So there's a lot of work to do to close the gap, but that superfast connectivity in the fixed world is there. And that can lead to pictures like this. A happy family look, none of them talking to each other. I worry about the young lad who hasn't got a device in his hand. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But they, of course, they wouldn't be as happy if the network ran out of capacity. And that exponential growth is the big challenge we've been dealing with. If we look back over that decade, we've seen the growth in traffic on our network grow by about a factor of 60. It grows at about 50% per annum, and it's been doing it like that for over a decade, and we forecast confidently it's going to continue doing it. So that means one engineering challenge we have is to worry about how we're going to make our network that took us 180 years to get this far is 60 times bigger in a mere decade's time. The good news is that the advances in the way we can put information on this stuff, single-mode optical fiber, mean that we're good to grow. Earlier this year, we demonstrated the ability to transmit about 13 terabits per second on a single hair-thin strand of glass. That would allow you, if you were daft enough and the company let me do it, to carry the entirety of the UK broadband traffic from all those many users busily Snapchatting and Facebooking on a single hair-thin strand of glass. We carry about 8 terabits per second. So the fixed network's in good shape at the moment in terms of dealing with capacity. But of course, this clicker is a bit temperamental. Hold on, see if we can get the next slide. There we go. Press hard. Of course, that's the fixed world. We all like this stuff, don't we? We like mobiles. I'm guessing one or two of you may have occasionally used one of these. 1999, which is only 18 years ago, was the first data connection to the internet using something called GPRS, a technology long gone. Since then, of course, we've managed to go through 4 different technologies. 4G was launched only in 2016. This is giving you a little update on how we're getting on with that. And there's 2 numbers on here worth watching. That population coverage, 97%. Well, that looks great, doesn't it? But actually, that's population coverage where people live. Mobiles tend to be used where you're not living, where you're out and about. So actually, we're starting to track that geographic coverage figure. I can update you today. As of this month, we're at 87% geographic coverage of the UK landmass, with a goal to get to 95%. So we're ploughing on, basically putting out this deep infrastructure to mean that we can consume all these lovely services, whether we're at home or whether we are out and about. So I think we can reasonably conclude that we're heading towards ubiquitous connectivity. I wish this clicker was as connected to the control signal. And that, of course, means we can do this. We can download loads of stuff. We can get access to all the lovely content that all those clever people have been creating. Whether it's SpongeBob SquarePants, I have no idea why that's on this slide, or whether it's the sport. You all get the point. What's also very interesting and is presenting other challenges for us is that we love being content sources. These are some stats from this year's Glastonbury Festival. We download, the citizens, the festival goers, uploaded 54 terabytes of information over the period of the Glastonbury Festival. Just to give you some sense of what that means, that would be the equivalent to, I grabbed this on the way out, Apollo 13, a very fine film. I can recommend it to you if you like space and things. It would be about 12,000 of these things, so 12,000 DVDs uploaded over the space of the Glastonbury Festival. If you were to stack those together, that would get you to a height actually taller than the Apollo 13 rocket, which was 110 meters, and slightly shorter than the BT Tower, the iconic BT Tower here in London. But I guess what we know, look at that, the most interesting stat there, it was double last year. Next year, we know, don't we, the festival goers are going to soar above the BT Tower with their desire to consume and upload information. So where does that take us to? It takes us to this. It takes us to some challenges as we eye what the next generation of mobile connectivity is going to be. This is how we're thinking about fifth generation, 5G, which we hope to be launching here in the next couple of years in the UK. And this is something that is at the work of research labs like mine and universities and standards bodies and global vendors. So this clicker really doesn't want to work. There we go. This is some of the science and engineering that we're developing right now to be able to make sure we can carry on growing. This is an experiment we did with Bristol University. I'll get rid of this thing. Ooh, I'll go back though. We did this with Bristol University in January this year. And that is you'll probably guess that's not ready for deployment yet. It's really rather large. What it is something called a massive MIMO antenna, and it's a really clever way of taking the fuel of a mobile network, which is the electrical spectrum that carries all the lovely data, and then reusing it in the same location, effectively allowing you and you and you and you to all use the same spectrum. That demonstration produced an efficiency of 117 bits per hertz. The bits per second bit is information rate, and the hertz is the fuel, the electrical spectrum. That's a world record. It's about 10 times the efficiency of the best 4G networks today. And damn me, it's been beaten by somebody else since we did that in January. But it gives you that sense of the technology advances, the way we're fusing physics and engineering to keep delivering the infrastructure that we all like using so much. This is a helikite. It looks like a balloon. It's not a balloon. I'm told that by the manufacturers of the balloon. They tell me it's a helikite. And this is the sort of thing that we're using to provide that coverage in that last 5%. This is something that our emergency response teams are using. Basically, that helikite carries a 4G cell. That means it can give 4G coverage over about 5 to 10 kilometers. So we rock up in an area, perhaps there's an incident, the blue light services need to get there, an area's been cut off, we chuck that up in the air, and you can provide vast, high-quality 4G coverage. So just an example of the way in which innovation is allowing us to deal with these things. So where does that get us to? It gets us to this. It gets us to a point where we are on the cusp of quite reasonably being ultra-connected, and that's connected humans, it's connected things, it's connected dogs, cats, your children, pets, bins, etc. And I think the future there is insight. Now, Sophie was talking about the way some of that insight is going to be used. We are experimenting with some of these things, though not quite so scary, I would say. These are some of the things we're doing with connecting stuff, harvesting data, storing it, analysing it, courtesy of all that Moore's Law stuff and all that processing power that's now available, and then trying to do something useful with it. So we are instrumenting, for example, pest control traps. The current model of pest control is you lay a trap, you wait every day, you go back and check the traps, and the vast majority of them have nothing in them. But you have to go back every day, which seems a complete waste of time, doesn't it? But you have to, just in case a small furry animal has crawled into the trap. In the future, those traps will be instrumented. You will only go to a trap that has actually got a small furry thing in it, and then you can go and release it into the wild. We're instrumenting bins. Bins need to be collected by bin lorries. We have a model whereby we collect bins either when they're half full or, annoyingly, when they've just overflowed. And another team needs to go and collect a bin. So refuge collection, again, it's a daft model, isn't it? Really, you want to instrument those bins and you want to send the lorries to collect the ones just before they're full, not just after they were full or when they're empty. There are other examples here which are slightly less trite. My favourite is parking. About 50% of all the traffic in your average town is a car looking to be parked. right? Driving around, all trying to find the space that you know is there, and town planners will tell us is there. You just can't find the damn thing. Isn't that a daft thing? So we're instrumenting parking spaces in Milton Keynes. We're basically providing routing information so you can just go straight to the parking space. You can book it. You can avoid the broken down bin lorry. You can avoid the traffic lights. You get the idea. This is creating insight that will allow you to do the things you want to do. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to crack through. If I can get my clicker to work, I'll crack through for you. This clicker really doesn't want to work. I wonder where the sensor is. I wonder if I can just... Wait, there we go. This is one example of us using this insight. So you've got this idea. You're gathering insight. Task omniscience is the best way to think about this. You have a task to do. What is the information you need at your fingertips in that moment to make that decision? We've been using big data, data science, algorithms, and all the lovely stuff we've been talking about in science to a very prosaic task. And that's how our field engineering force operates. 20,000 vans. That's a process of optimization about getting the right person with the right skills to the right place at the right time to do the right thing. Think about that at mass, at scale. Vitally important for our communications infrastructure because those men and women underpin all communications. They fix faults and they install new services. In the past 3 years, by using data science and algorithms and the instrumentation of that process, we've put tools in their hands that are allowing us to reduce the wasted time traveling by half. So think about that. You can think of that in terms of fuel wastage. You can think of it in terms of less pollution. Or you can think of it in terms of greater efficiency, less frustration for people, more customers served. In fact, there are 400,000 more customer tasks done per year as a result of that use of insight. That captures, if you like, one example. This is a completely different flavor of the same thing. This is mass customization. What we're working with our BT Sport products is looking at how we can put the customer in control. So any of you who are Liverpool fans and were watching the Liverpool-Chelsea match over the weekend, I'm sure as Chelsea got that late equaliser, you were delighted that the director made you look at the Chelsea fans leaping around and the Chelsea manager going, yay. If you're a Liverpool fan, it would be much better to look at the cop all going, oh no. That's what we can do now. We put you in charge. You choose the camera. You choose the angle. So empowerment is one of the things that we can get through this ultra connectivity. The blue light services. We're all used to people arriving with cameras, be they first responders, be they ambulances. Those are not connected today. Imagine how much more effective those men and women who keep us safe on the streets or help us when we're in distress can be when they are ultra-connected. That's something that we are working with Blue Light Services now. I'm going to skip this one because there's somebody else talking about cars in a minute, and I'm very conscious of time. But I do want to get to, if I can, this one, because 90 seconds, that looks like a load of people with bikes, doesn't it?
Can we trust the big companies?
Yeah. Of course you can trust the big companies. So this looks like a load of people on bikes. They are, and they've got these on them. These are bike lights. That looks like a bike light. It's a really clever bike light. It's from a little startup company over in Ireland. What this does is actually flashes a bit brighter if somebody approaches you. So it's using connections to essentially make you safer. What it also does is it streams data. Did you hit a pothole? Did you swerve? Did you swerve a lot? Now imagine everybody's got them. This is a way of instrumenting a city without building billions of pounds worth of infrastructure. So town planners can get the insight that says, well, you know what, there's an accident black spot there, because every damn cyclist swerves for some reason. Or look, there's a big pothole there. A really innovative way of essentially instrumenting things to allow better informed decisions. And this one is an interesting one. And so this is basically diagnostic surgery. 5G is going to give us ultra reliability and low latency. That will unleash, if you like, a whole range of use cases. The one we're looking at here is the idea of letting med students be in the surgery with the surgeon. So this is a link with VR headsets and haptic feedback. It's a remote expert. To your question, can we trust the big companies? Well, the answer is the same as it always is for new technology, isn't it? Society needs to get its head round what it wants to do from this technology. My firm view is, as an optimist, is that this actually has vast potential for humans and vast potential to make things better. But we need policy. We need a framework where policy can be enacted. We need the ability to track SLAs. So one of the big things we're doing in the telecommunications industry is working, if you like, on all those standards that would sit behind this world of data, that effectively would say, well, who's got data? What is the policy? Who's in charge of that policy? And was that policy actually adhered to? Because if you haven't got that framework, no matter what policy you'd like to have, you can't enact it. So actually, I think we are on a big revolution. I'm going to duck the question in terms of whether you can trust them. I think the point is society, well, because society needs to decide. But what I will tell you is in the world of telecommunications, this is all about developing international standards where you have transparency and you have clarity over what is happening to data. And that, I think, that's certainly the approach my company's taking. And I think increasingly that is the approach companies will have to take. Ultimately, my view is the data that you create is yours, and you should ultimately, as customers, be in charge of that, and that's the formal policy position of my organization. But more broadly, I think the job of work the industry needs to do right now is make sure it has the technology and the frameworks in place to allow us to implement policy when societies have worked out what that policy should be in the way society does that, which is through the usual channels, transparency, discussion, and democracy. There you go. You need a new clicker. Thanks very much.